Hello, this is Hunk Marvel, and I'd like to alert my viewers to a certain injustice that's going on. It's Black History Month, and I don't want to sound like I'm picking on black people, but I just have to do this. I typed in black inventions in the search box for YouTube, and this is one of the many videos I came upon. And this fool talks about how without black inventors we wouldn't have the microphone, we wouldn't have the computer, and oh, my life is so much easier thanks to these black inventors. Now you could look into each and every one of these claims and find the truth for yourself. But one thing that really annoys me, this is the Channel F, made by Fairchild. It came out in 1976, the Fairchild Channel F video game console. And I consider it the first real home video game console. Now, it was preceded by the Magnavox Odyssey. But the Magnavox Odyssey, it just had a dot on the TV screen. You hooked it up to your TV, and you just move around a dot, and you play Pong on it. It had no artificial intelligence. It didn't use cartridges. It used game cards. You just stick it in, and it just changed the programming of the hardware, and you put these things over your TV screen, and it really wasn't. It was a good start, but it really wasn't a true video game console, in my opinion. This was the first one. It used joysticks, used a cartridge, game cartridge, so you could change the games, hook it up to your TV. And this man is claiming that a man named Jerry Lawson is responsible for creating the first video game console using cartridges, which was a great innovation. And this is an interview by Jerry Lawson, who died in 2011, I believe. And people are giving him credit for creating the first true video game console. And you have all these people who believe it. Jerry Lawson, creator of the Fairchild Channel F home video game system. Jerry's talking about the video game system he created. One of the earliest systems made. He made the controllers, which are still unique to this day. Well, they're unique to this day because nobody wanted to use that design again. But look at some of the comments. Wow, can't believe a black guy invented the first video game console to use a microprocessor. Not the blah blah blah. A true pioneer, he created the first cartridge video game console. The first, not the second, the first. Before Xbox, before PlayStation, before Nintendo, there was Jerry Lawson. Respect. The video game media and the media in general give all this attention to all these white video game developers and engineers of the past and present, but act like this guy never even existed. A black man developed the first gaming console? Wow. So everybody's buying into this stuff. So you have other videos. So you have this guy mourning his death. He created the first video game console. It used cartridges and blah blah blah. Now, it's true, I do consider the Fairchild Channel F to be the true first video game console. Imagine how many of his inventions were stolen by people who looked him in his face and said his ideas would not work. What are you talking about? It went onto the market. It sold hundreds of thousands of copies of units. Here's another one. A tribute to Jerry Lawson, inventor of the first video game. That's a bit of a stretch. First video game was created by Jerry Lawson. Did you know that? An African American. Inventor of the first video game. Before there was Kevin Flynn of Encom, there was Jerry Lawson. That's a reference to Tron. Well, is it true? Did Jerry Lawson, an African American, create the first true video game console? Well, I found this article. The Untold Story of the Invention of the Game Cartridge. Now, this came out in 1976. So if you've ever used a video game cartridge on a video game console, if you've ever used one, you have two men to thank, Wallace Kirshner and Lawrence Haskell, who invented the game cartridge 40 years ago while working at an obscure company, blah, blah, blah. What's going on here? Why is it that this article is saying Wallace Kirshner and Lawrence Haskell invented it, while all these dweebs on YouTube are giving credit to Jerry Lawson? Well, this is nothing new. If you look into the history, you'll find that to say that Jerry Lawson invented the first video game or the first video game console to use a cartridge is a humongous stretch. So Intel invented the microprocessor, and you have Haskell and Kirshner incorporating that and making their own cartridges. They went to Radio Shack and made their own cartridges. We went to Radio Shack and bought these little plastic boxes. We were able to plug the little box into the console with a connector we put on it. So they made a cartridge using video game console prototype. And then they went over to Fairchild, and Fairchild was going to streamline it for consumer use. And they hired this man, Jerry Lawson, to head the team that would streamline the prototype that already was using a cartridge and video game controllers. And Lawson helped design that controller, the controllers. And you also have Ron Smith, cartridge mechanism designer, and Nick Talesfore, who decided to base the cartridge on the 8-track tapes from the 70s. And he came up with the design. And Talesfore hired an artist, Tom Kemifuji, to design the labels. His illustrations depicted scenes that were often dramatically exaggerated or confusingly abstract compared to the actual on-screen graphics, setting a precedent that other companies would follow for years to come. Like the Atari video games. In an interview in 2009, Jerry Lawson said, "We were afraid. We didn't have statistics on multiple insertion and what it would do." So the article goes on to say, to protect from accidental damage, Ron Smith's cartridge design contained a spring-loaded plastic door that protected a row of 22 gold-plated contacts inside the plastic housing while not in use. Once inserted into the console, a cam would open the door, exposing the contacts. Then a special connector with flexible metal pins inside the console would rotate up to meet the cartridge and make electrical contact, simultaneously sweeping them to break through any corrosion that had built up on the fingers. So it appears that if you want to thank people for the first video game console that uses a cartridge, which was a great innovation, the very first home video game console in my opinion, the first bona fide one, you thank Wallace Kirshner and Lawrence Haskell. Jerry Lawson headed a team that streamlined the prototype made by Haskell and Kirshner. Yet, who gets all the credit for inventing the first video game console? This guy, because of the color of his skin. Now, I'm not saying Jerry Lawson wasn't intelligent. He built his own arcade game in his own garage in 1973. But how would you like it if you came up with some innovation or invention, and some company, you sold the idea to a company, and they had a team work on your product to come up with a public version of it, a product, and then years later the media give all the credit for your invention to a man who happened to be on the team simply because he has brown skin. This is all about Zog trying to diminish the contributions of Occidentals, and so that we won't have any problem with becoming a minority. We won't see the big deal. We won't see the loss. So this is one of the later examples of Zog giving all the credit to a non-Occidental for an invention. This is one of two strategies. In this strategy, there's a team working on a product, and they give all the credit for the development to the non-white team member, and they ignore everybody else's contribution. But they were just working on something based off of a prototype. And the other strategy is, if you have an invention and then subsequently you have a lot of patents and other versions of that invention, if somewhere along the line there's a non-white who came up with their own version of it, they give all the credit for the invention of that product to that non-white person. It's all to diminish the role of Occidentals, so we won't mind becoming a minority, which will set us up for slaughter. So you should be very concerned